Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a video covering two new IEMs and some general first impressions from a gaming perspective in a multitude of titles. The Orchestra 2 is a distinctly different tuning than the Supermix 5, at least in feel in the ear, and it is a distinctly different look as well. It is more bulbous and larger than the Supermix 5, but it is one that looks pretty stunning in person, better than it looks in the pictures, with the pearl-looking faceplate, as well as that all-translucent resin chassis where you see all 10 of those balanced armatures quite nicely. It is a 2-pin connection. It has a interchangeable cable in the box that you guys can see in the unboxing video, the short that I posted. And the fish mouth nozzle is a little bit wide, not necessarily too long, and kind of like about as similar in width as the Supermix 5. The nozzle on the Supermix 5, though, is a little bit longer. You can see the design is all black. It looks quite a bit more sleek with the just chrome here on the faceplate design. These are vented. The Orchestra 2 is not. So keep that in mind as well if you are somebody that is prone to pressure buildup type issues. The Supermix 5, I have not shown you guys the unboxing of this, but it is a fairly typical unboxing experience from Ziigaat here. Also, just again to reiterate, you got 10 balanced armatures on the Orchestra. I'll show you guys the tuning here. And then on the Supermix 5, you've got 5 drivers in each side, 1 bone conduction driver, 1 dynamic driver, 2 balanced armatures, 1 microplanar. And the bone conduction driver does cause, if you hit it, you will feel a little bit of vibration throughout the resin chassis. Let me get the cable here. You guys can see it is a interchangeable termination and a fairly lightweight, not a thick braid on the Ziigaat cable. The Orchestra 2 and the Supermix 5 are both going to score around a B+ in Valorant for different reasons. The Orchestra 2, I do prefer this tuning. It's more U-shaped, and I do find that the bass comes through a little bit more elevated in that mid-bass range, so footsteps on thockier materials come through a little bit better with more urgency, more emphasis, but everything's very clean and tame despite getting a little bit of that feel of that additional boost on the sub-bass. The mid-range, the treble, nothing was fatiguing. Everything came through clean and accurate sounding. But one thing I will say when we get into some of the prevalence in the mix, gunfire does come through more prevalent on the Orchestra 2 than the Supermix 5. So greater emphasis, greater urgency in placing those things around the map. In large team scale fights, however, that does cause a little bit of separation and layering issues in terms of placing other footsteps, placing other audio cues that are going on in the mix at the same time. In Valorant, but still to a very good extent because that bass, the attack, the decay, very clean. I didn't find gunfire to have that extra bloom or on the rumble that cause issues with separation on other things in the mix. So very good in terms of separation, layering, the overall sound tuning profile. Very good here. The one thing though that just threw me off a little bit, and I could just need to tip roll and find something that maybe works a little bit better. But I just found that the depth perception does not come through as clean as it does on the Supermix 5. The imaging just came through a little bit better despite things being less emphasized on the Supermix 5 in comparison. So depth perception, like as somebody's coming out from behind a wall horizontally, good, but I found that it just could feel better. Also depth perception in terms of at a depth in front of me. So how far that person is precisely behind a wall or behind a box, those things could come through a little bit cleaner on the Orchestra 2, but a solid performer and a great tuning on the Orchestra 2. The Supermix 5, the tuning is not as bass heavy as the Supermix 4, the low end region tying right into the mid range, not as U-shaped or V-shaped as something like the Orchestra 2. And that leads the gunfire to actually come across as very clean, even kind of more sterile and clean than it sounds on the Orchestra 2. So depending on if you want that extra emphasis and urgency, or if you want it to be a little bit more clean, you could go either way. But both perform very well with gunfire in terms of attack decay on that bass range, no bloom obscuring other things in the mix. Again, I found the imaging and the depth perception to sound a little bit better on the Supermix 4 than the Orchestra 2. But again, some of the footsteps, the thocks, come through more prevalent on the Orchestra 2 than the Supermix 4, especially when we get to the light taps, which was really the only issue when there's a lot going on. Some of the very light things kind of just fade away in comparison to the Orchestra 2. Also, as you are pushing and you're trying to peek and get that angle on somebody, when there are a lot of those light taps, they kind of blur together in comparison to coming through a little bit more prevalent on the Kiwi Air's Orchestra 2. Still sound very good. You can still place people. It's just, again, that emphasis, that urgency being a little bit greater on the Kiwi Air's Orchestra 2. But again, that imaging accuracy being a little bit better on the Supermix 5. So trade-offs here, but in comparing them to something like the Mangird Tea Pro, you really just feel the difference in getting that level of emphasis and urgency, but also getting that imaging accuracy and depth perception. So in comparison to the Mangird Tea Pro, which I score an A, these are going to be at that B+ region on the wallhack certified tier list for Valorant. Moving to Apex Legends, I actually put the Orchestra 2 a little bit higher. I think it picks up a little bit of pace. I would score it an A- and almost an A, just not quite rivaling the things that I have there right now. This is a set with this type of a tuning that all of those things that I need to come out in the mix during third parties, fourth parties, or even just in a 3v3, everything comes through very nicely. Slides, climbs, doors opening, zip lines, abilities going off, so on and so forth. And very nicely throughout the mix in Apex, I get a great sense of depth on that prevalent gunfire. And I don't find the gunfire to be something that muddies other things in the mix in Apex either. So if I'm shooting a 301 or a lot of people are shooting next to me, again, no issues in separation and layering. I could have multiple people fighting on me with ultimates going on outside, and I still was able to pick up precisely the most urgent threat that I needed to focus on first. When I'm popping a shield battery or a shield cell, those things did not flood the mix where I felt like a deer in the headlights while trying to heal myself. And that's very important as well, because when you're micromanaging your health in a game like Apex and popping plates in COD, or you're popping shield cells in Apex, you need to be able to micromanage your health and know when you need to stop, maybe change your position, so on and so forth, and focus on somebody that's trying to push you. Those things handled very well here on the Orchestra 2 as well. So a really good set in Apex with a tuning that works very well. Again, providing a experience that's actually quite fun as well. Good amount of bass, but again, nothing feels muddled or muddy through ultimates and abilities. It's just a solid performer in Apex Legends. The Supermix 5 in Apex Legends actually goes the opposite direction. I would score this a B for Apex Legends. There's too much in the mix of Apex that just becomes too thin, too veiled by other things going on in the mix. The gunfire from your perspective, as well as the gunfire around you, is something that does cause some occlusion of the things around you. So like the gunfire is very prevalent, but the things that don't come through as well on this in comparison to something like the Orchestra 2 are the slides, the taps in buildings, the opening of doors, kicking in doors, the shield cells, things that are actually happening around you that I want to be paying attention to and listening to. The separation and layering, still not bad. The overall imaging is there. It's just that emphasis, that urgency, and that pull through the mix that is really lacking in Apex Legends for this type of a tuning in general. Again, A and B testing it in comparison to the Orchestra 2, it is a large difference, and one that I think is represented by the gap from a B to an A. And just briefly, Call of Duty, I just didn't quite like the Supermix 5's tuning for Call of Duty. Like the things that I want a little bit more urgency and emphasis on in the mid-base region just don't shine through, like people kicking through doors. It's a set that's like almost let down by its very large sounding stage where things just feel a little bit too thin at various distances. It's just much easier to pick things up on the Orchestra 2, but I do find, again, the imaging could feel ever so slightly better on the Orchestra 2 as well. So like the Supermix 5, it's not bad by any means in Call of Duty. I just wouldn't place it like at a B range. The Orchestra 2, I would probably have around a B+. Again, just could be something that is a little bit better with depth perception and imaging, particularly when you're trying to track people in buildings. Overall, though, both could be used pretty well for Call of Duty. So that's really it for this one, guys. The Orchestra 2, I do think, has a really nice tuning, and it's a very clean sounding set, particularly in a multitude of titles. I do think that the overall tuning fares better for gaming than the Supermix 5, but the Supermix 5, again, does have a pretty strong accuracy level in something like Valorant. So depending on your title and depending on what you're looking for in terms of a tuning, you could certainly look at either of these for Valorant. I think the Orchestra 2, though, for Call of Duty as well as Apex, definitely picks up the points. So I hope it helped, guys. I'll get some more testing and I'll get these finalized on the wallhack certified tier list. But those are my early impressions on these two new sets, the Orchestra 2 and the Supermix 5. Until next time, guys, peace.